live in a two-dimensional world.
We won't go in one direction
or zig where we can zag. We will walk through walls. We will take a look around us.
We will not be confined.
We believe in the path of least limits.
We won't be told how to view the world.
We will experience true freedom.
We will not compromise.
We will live the game through our hands.
We will be in control of something.
We will change the system.
So earlier this year, my boyfriend came to visit, and I was playing Mario 64 in front of him, and he started making fun of my admittedly terrible gameplay because I kept like missing jumps or misjudging distances or bumping into walls, sliding off the edges of platforms. And I got frustrated because to me, all of those things were just like flaws that were baked into the game, right? I like Mario 64. I think it deserves the praise it gets, but it is frustrating to play for me. Mario feels so slippery. If you get too close to an edge, he either slides off or he hangs onto the ledge. Turning around takes forever. Mario has to like run around in a circle instead of just like turning in place. I always thought bonking was awful. It just feels bad. It feels bad when you like don't make a jump immediately and you get launched backwards and fall on your ass and have to wait there for 5 seconds looking dumb before you can get up again and try again. All of that just seems like, oh, well, this is the age showing, right? These are like the wrinkles forming in the face of Mario 64 as it slowly gets more and more outdated in comparison to modern games with higher fidelity and better movement engines. But I don't know if that's necessarily the case, because the way my boyfriend explained it, he was talking about how Mario feels like the weight he is. Does that make sense? Like if Mario was a tangible object, he moves and jumps and runs like he actually would if he was made of matter and had mass. And I think when you contextualize it like that, it opens up a window into understanding like why Mario 64 was so influential and why they were so careful in the way they designed his movement. But it also shows that their motivation with Mario 64 is different from what their motivation is now when they create a movement engine for a Mario game. In Mario 64, when you press the analog stick to move Mario, you feel like you are moving Mario. You are pushing him in a direction. The analog stick is like grabbing him by a little string on his head and tugging him in a certain direction until he begins running, right? But when you play a modern Mario game, Mario's movement is one-to-one with the analog stick. And that's, like, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting the way game design has evolved? It makes a lot of sense that if this is everybody's first time picking up a controller with an analog stick and moving a character, that you would want to make that feel, like, real. You want to make it feel like you're moving a character, right? Because it needs to be a somewhat analog experience for people to understand the concept of moving characters around in analog 3D. But today, video games are just more common, right? They're not this, like, weird experimental new media. They're, like, an expected part of media. They're something we've come to expect, not something new to us anymore. I say us, like I was alive when Mario 64 came out. So it makes sense that today, since video games are just sort of like expected, they're not new, that the way we design video games can be more abstract. A character can just move one to one with the analog stick in 3D space, and that can feel fine because people don't need to be like introduced to the shallow end of 3D gaming anymore. It's not a concept that needs to be explained anymore. It's just sort of like an expected part of the medium. So if you understand the medium, you understand what it means to move around in 3D space. And now you can design these games to feel more satisfying to control as video games, not necessarily feel like a novelty of moving a character around in 3D space. And I think this explains why for so many years I was just always so frustrated with Mario 64. Because if you try to play it like a modern Mario game, of course you're going to get frustrated. Mario feels slow. He lags behind your inputs. Again, like it feels like you are dragging the character along by a string. I think it's just interesting how the approach has changed, right? It shows like an evolution, which is cool. Yeah, no hate to Mario 64. I don't think it's a bad game. I think you could even say that about the 2D Mario games too. You go back and you play the original Super Mario Brothers, and it's the same philosophy. Mario feels very heavy and very difficult to move. He takes a long time to build up speed. And you play a new Mario game, and it still feels weighty, but it definitely feels a lot lighter. Like, the characters move around a lot more quickly. I'm sure a lot of that also has to do with just, like, hardware limitations. Like, Mario literally couldn't move faster or more intricately on the NES because the NES couldn't process that kind of movement. Isn't it interesting how video games have evolved from this is a simulation of what this would be actually to just here's an experience. Here's a controller with buttons that you use to play a game. Okay, bye.